This is obviously the prequel to the Lord of the Rings movie, so Peter Jackson's taking us back before the lands of Middle-earth were covered in darkness. And so it focuses on Bilbo Baggins, who was played as Ian Holm in the original movie. Now he's played by Martin Freeman, who some people might know from The Office and the new TV show Sherlock. It's not very good. There's the headline. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. They're beautifully made films. They've got amazing... You can just kind of get lost in the world of Middle-earth, but they're also kind of really intense, emotional stories, plus great action. The problem with Lord of the Rings was the fact that they had too much story to pack into 3 films. This has the exact opposite problem. He's taken one book, he's stretched it over 3 films, and there's just not enough story. It's so padded out, particularly the first 2 hours of the movie, where basically, I kid you not, there is a 20-minute montage where dwarves just rock up to Bilbo Baggins' house. And the plot of this movie is the dwarves want to go back and they want to find their home, which has been taken over by a dragon, and there's some gold there. And part of the problem with the fact that the movie is so padded out is the fact that it kind of exposes that the stakes of this movie aren't very high. In the first movie, you have the lands of Middle-earth being covered in darkness. Here, it's about a bunch of dwarves who want to get their home back, and you're thinking, at a certain point, you know what, guys, move on, get a real estate agent. So, look, I'm excited to see what they do with the second and third movies. I'm not writing it off entirely, but there's just not enough plot to keep it exciting for this first one.
Do you think they've gone more for the look of the film because it's being shot in 48 frames?
Yes.
Is that something, do you think that they've gone, let's make this look a fantastic film, but they've sort of forgotten about the story?
Well, that's interesting because the 48 frames thing is an interesting shift here. So traditionally movies are shot in 24 frames. What they've done now is they've doubled that. So you've got twice as much visual information, which actually takes it closer to the frame rate of video. So what you're watching now on this TV is a bit closer to 30 frames. The problem with doing that, though, is that when you watch a movie in 48 frames, it looks like video. It looks like the world's most expensive episode of The Bold and the Beautiful, or even worse, so a video game cutscene. So it actually... look, it's early days with this technology. Again, I'm not writing it off, but my first reaction to it is it makes the whole thing look quite cheap. But like I said, there's a lot more stuff coming in the second and third movies. There's dragons. Come on, there's dragons. Dragons voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch too. So look, I'm excited to see what they do, but as a first movie, a little bit underwhelming.
All right then. Well, let's move along then. Les Miserables, the other big one coming up.
You actually do it with proper pronunciation, unlike the entire cast of the movie. Les Mis is actually one of my picks of certainly the Oscar season, but of things opening on Boxing Day as well. You've got Hugh Jackman as Jean Valjean. I'm not going to do the French anymore because it clearly doesn't work. And you've got Russell Crowe as Javert and Anne Hathaway in there as well. It's an amazing cast. So this is from the director who did The King's Speech. And what he's done with this movie is really fascinating because he's taken the movie musical and he's stripped it apart. So there's no big, shiny dance sequences. It's all about big, emotional singing. And it's all long shots on these actors as they sing. And they sing live on set. Now, this is a really interesting point because most movie musicals, what they do is they sing before they get on set. They pre-record it and then they play it back on set. And they've always done that because it was impossible to get good, clean audio on set. But they went out of their way to get them to record on set. And the results are amazing. There's one particular scene with Anne Hathaway who sings that famous I Dreamed a Dream song that Susan Boyle made extra famous recently. Susan Boyle doesn't have a cameo on this. She's too busy playing a Hobbit in The Hobbit. But Anne Hathaway has this amazing scene and he's one shot and they hold on her throughout this entire song and it is amazing. That one shot alone is the whole reason to see this movie. But one thing to know about, it is very long and it's almost more of an opera in the sense that every single line, there's no spoken dialogue, every single line is sung.
I had heard that.
Yeah.
So it's just like the musical, really?
Yeah, it is very much like the musical, but I think if you're not a fan of musicals, don't bother. It's not something that's going to turn you. It is a musical for musical fans, but within that context, it's really well done.
Very compelling stuff.
So what else should we be looking out for?
Well, if you've got kids, there's 2 really good options for kids' movies. One of them is the new Disney movie, which is Wreck-It Ralph, which stars John C. Reilly. And I love this because it's set in the world of old kind of 80s video games. And so he plays a video game villain who decides he just doesn't want to be a villain anymore. It's really cute. It's really funny. But actually, of the 2 kids flicks out at the moment, my pick is the one that actually hasn't done that well in the States, which is the new one from DreamWorks, which is called Rise of the Guardians. And I like to call this, basically, it's the Avengers of fairy tale characters. So it's what happened if the Easter Bunny, played by Hugh Jackman, and the Santa Claus, played by Alec Baldwin with a Russian accent for reasons that are too confusing. What happens if all of those different characters got together and tried to fight off Jude Law? It sounds a bit dumb. possibly because it is. But they've executed it really beautifully. It's one of those great moments where half the fun of watching the movie is watching the movie, the other half of the fun is watching kids watch the movie, because it's so visual and so enveloping. You can actually hear the kids go, ah, ooh. And if you're in a cinema and you hear kids doing that, you know it works.
So it might not appeal to adults, but the kids are certainly going to love it.
For me, possibly, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm basically a child. For me, it reverted me back to being a kid, so it was great. But yeah, possibly not as... doesn't have perhaps the cross-generational appeal of something like Wreck-It Ralph. But if you're not in the mood to cry in Les Mis, or to necessarily go back and be bored senseless by hobbits or kids' movies, you've got a couple of action films as well. Obviously, Skyfall is still out, the James Bond film, which I know lots of people are enjoying. But the one that I saw last night that I'm really fascinated by is Tom Cruise's new film, which is called Jack Reacher. It's a cop movie, essentially, and it's like an 80s cop movie that's really funny, really sharp, that you stumble across on TV late at night, and it acts really, really, really sharp. And I think it comes out on New Year's Day, and I really recommend it.
Now, what can you tell us about the world that was for movies in 2012? What were your picks? What were the things that probably didn't hit the mark?
It's interesting. 2012, at the beginning of 2012, was really exciting for movies because there was lots of things that you could get excited about. We had things like Prometheus and The Dark Knight Rises, which had a lot of hype. What was striking about 2012 was there was actually quite a lot of movies that didn't necessarily match up to the hype. I think Prometheus is a really great example, which was supposed to be the kind of maybe possible prequel to Alien, but ended up not being so. But in terms of movies that I loved, I did very much enjoy The Dark Knight Rises. I know for some people it wasn't as exciting as The Dark Knight, but as a conclusion to that amazing trilogy where he'd taken, this character of Batman, who years ago we thought was a spent force in movie making, because it was basically... The last time we saw him, he had latex nipples and was played by George Clooney. They reinvented him as this psychologically real character, and I thought they gave him a great ending. In terms of movies that aren't from franchises, because I swear I watch movies that aren't in franchises on occasion, Looper was a fantastic sci-fi film directed by a guy named Rian Johnson. It starred Bruce Willis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the same person caught in different times. Very clever story, very well told, very well put together. Another one that, if people haven't seen, I cannot recommend enough that they get out on DVD, is a movie called Argo, which is actually directed by Ben Affleck. So it's set around the Iranian hostage crisis, and he plays a CIA agent who tries to smuggle these 6 Americans out by masquerading them as a film crew. And it's very funny, it's very dramatic. It's that great sensation where you get 2/3 into a movie and you're hanging off the edge of your chair just going, how's this going to end? How's this going to end? That's when you know you're having a really great experience.
And of course there was the facial hair as well, which is very 2012.
Oh yes, the year of the beard. But between Ben Affleck and the beard and those dwarves with the beard, I think everybody in movies right now needs beard clippers as a person.
Well, Marc Fennell, it's been awesome catching up with you. Thank you so much for filling us in on everything that's great to look out for with Boxing Day coming up, and of course for 2012.
Anytime.